G'day, I wanted to have a bit of a chat with you about some of the things I've been writing about on my blog, lyleshelton.com.au. That's it behind me. And starting off with Malcolm Turnbull's book, A Bigger Picture. It seems like old news now. It's been out a few days, a lot's happened. But I was really keen to get my hands on a copy of this book because some of the events that took place in it I was involved with, and particularly the same-sex marriage debate. Chapter 39 is Malcolm's take on that debate. And it was quite enlightening reading it because you get a sense of what he really thinks of Christians, and it's not pretty. Now, I spent time with Turnbull. I led delegations to see him, had time on the phone with him, trying to explain to him that if they change the definition of marriage, that would have enormous consequences in terms of freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the freedom of Christian schools and Muslim schools to employ staff who share their ethos and to uphold what the parents want their children taught about marriage. And of course, we were told all through that debate there'd be no consequences, no one else's freedoms would be affected or anything like this. And we tried to get this message through to Mr. Turnbull, but he didn't listen. And you read his book and you realise that he actually, despite turning on that famous Malcolm Turnbull charm at the time in the meetings and in the phone calls, we actually get to see what he really thought of us in the book. And as I said, it's pretty ugly. He says the debate about religious freedom is just about the religious right wanting to entrench discrimination against gays. Now, that was never where we were coming from at all. We simply wanted there to be freedom and diversity so that those of us who held a different view would be free to continue to hold that view on the other side without being vulnerable to be carted off to anti-discrimination tribunals and the like. We wanted Christian schools to be free. Here's what he says about Christian schools. He said it's just about allowing religious schools to discriminate against gays. Again, ugly stuff. That's not where any parent is coming from. No Christian school wants to do that, but they do want to be free to uphold an ethos. And there is a clash of rights there, and there should have been a way to work this through. And of course, that's unresolved with the Morrison government trying to bring forward a religious discrimination bill to clean up the mess that Malcolm Turnbull made. One of the interesting revelations in the book, if I could take just a bit more time on this, was something that's a little bit of insider baseball, but those who follow this debate closely would know that there was a group of Rainbow Rebel Liberal MPs, Tim Wilson from Victoria, Trevor Evans from here in Queensland, Dean Smith from WA, Warren Ench also from Queensland. Now, Smith was in the Senate, of course, but the House of Reps Rainbow Rebels had actually said that they would cross the floor. This was before the plebiscite was granted, and there was a lot of frustration building. So they wanted to force the issue of same-sex marriage, and they actually wanted to make history and join with Labor and the Greens to pass a bill in the Parliament. Now, of course, as I said, this means crossing the floor of the House of Representatives, handing over the power of the government to the Leader of the Opposition, then Bill Shorten, and essentially creating a constitutional crisis just so that they could get a gay marriage bill up. Now, we were really alarmed about this at the time, and of course nothing came of it, but it was a serious threat, and it actually precipitated the postal plebiscite as an option coming forward as a result of these Rainbow Rebels. Now, the fascinating thing in Turnbull's book is that he talks about this, and he actually says that their tactics had the tacit support of the Liberal Party leadership group. Turnbull says he wasn't particularly fond of the idea, but it had the support as a way to try and be a circuit breaker. It was referred to as the controlled explosion. A lot of dastardly things happen in politics, and you realise that there was a lot of people, even at the very top of the leadership of the government, who weren't serious about preserving marriage at all, even though that was Liberal Party policy as brought forward by its grassroots. The other big event of this week is the 250th anniversary of James Cook's landing on at Botany Bay and his discovery of the east coast of Australia, Point Hicks in Victoria. Remarkable man. The usual culture war stuff has come out, talk of it precipitated genocide and the like. I just love Geoffrey Blaney. He went on Sky News this week and he said, talk of European settlement being genocidal is just silly, to use his word, silly. And it is. He said that's best left in describing Hitler. Nothing of the sort happened here. Yes, there were some massacres, there was some conflict, a whole lot of diseases were brought that killed far more Aboriginal people tragically than any conflict and violence. But this was sadly going to happen when the European culture met with the Indigenous culture. But Blaney also has made the point in his other writings that there was a lot of violence in Aboriginal culture before white settlement. They weren't living as utopian nomads in sweetness and light with one another. There were hundreds of tribes and they were in a perpetual state of war. And Blaney has written that violent death by spearing or clubbing was a restraint on the growth of the Aboriginal population just before the arrival of Europeans and for some time after. Thank goodness that the Europeans came and the black on black violence, which was limiting their population growth, stopped. Now, sadly some other things came that also limited population growth like disease. But on the whole, we've tried to forge a just, not always perfect, not always have we got it right, but a just society where there's opportunity for all, and that's certainly the Australia that we live in today. And this is why Captain Cook's remarkable voyage of discovery, a round the world voyage from 1768 to 1771, he traversed the globe via Tahiti, New Zealand, the east coast of Australia, and through his meticulous map making and his botanical discoveries through Joseph Banks and Daniel Solander and the other scientists on board, they were able to gather so much information about this amazing country and take it back to England, and of course inform the decision to form a colony here, and of course the rest is history. A wonderful thing. We should be celebrating Cook. He was a remarkable man. His achievements were incredible for his day, and it's to be celebrated. David Spears is someone who I've really admired as a political journalist. I've been interviewed by him a number of times. He's tough, but he's always fair. He's now with the ABC hosting the Insiders program. I try and watch it every week. I generally watch it on iView because I'm generally at church when Insiders is on. But he had Greg Sheridan as one of the panellists a couple of weeks ago, which was terrific, I thought, because Greg is a genuine conservative intellectual. He's smart. And he took the opportunity on the show to make some points about the way the ABC treated Cardinal George Pell, who of course was exonerated earlier last month by the High Court of Australia, 7-0, from heinous child sex charges that had hung over him for years, and of course had gone through lower courts in Victoria where he'd been convicted and spent more than 400 days in jail before being declared innocent by the High Court. And of course the ABC led the charge against Pell. Its reporting was aggressive, it was one-sided, and didn't cover the possibility that he might be innocent, which of course he was declared to be in the end. And Sheridan made the point on David Spears' Insiders show that the ABC should really pause and reflect in the way that it used its incredible power. It's a big organisation, $1 billion of taxpayer funding per year. It's got vast resources, and they were applied in great measure in the reporting of Pell from a very one-sided perspective. And Sheridan was right to make those comments. Unfortunately, he made a small error. He said that the ABC commissioned the despicable satirist Tim Minchin, who wrote an obscene song about Cardinal Pell back in 2016 called "Come Home Cardinal Pell, I Think You Are Scum." Now, the ABC never commissioned that, but they did play it on almost constant rotation for quite a while, and it still remains, as I understand, on some of the ABC websites, including The Drum. And Sheridan's mistake was to say the ABC commissioned that. Now, that precipitated a big pile-on on Sheridan, a big controversy over the course of the week. And then last Sunday, of course, Peter Van Onselen, Virginia Trioli, both who present on the ABC, Van Onselen also writes for The Australian, they really sunk the boot into Sheridan. And Trioli particularly picked up on the error, which of course allowed there to be virtually no reflection on the substance of what he was saying, and that is that the ABC did get it wrong and should reflect on the way it covers these sort of cases. The sad thing was that David Spears, in his final comment, said that the ABC stands by its reporting of Cardinal George Pell. I think it was a great shame that he made that comment. That's something which should be said not by a journalist. That's a comment on behalf of the organisation, more appropriate for the managing director or the chair, Ida Buttrose. I hope that David Spears doesn't drink the Kool-Aid at the ABC. I hope he continues to have conservative commentators balancing the insider's couch and continues to report and provide analysis from a diverse range of views. Michael Moore of The Left in America produced a film, his latest film. It was released on YouTube this week. It's called Planet of the Humans, and it looks at the renewable energy industry and comes up with the same conclusion that conservatives have been saying about wind and solar and battery storage for years, and that is that it doesn't add up. It's a nice idea. We all want to have renewable energy, but it can't produce baseload power. It's made our electricity supply unreliable and expensive, and our electricity bills in Australia have more than doubled over the last 10 years as we've shut down coal-fired power stations and we've put this unreliable source into the grid. Victoria, South Australia experiencing blackouts and the like. This is extraordinary from someone on the left producing a film which really does shred one of the key tenets of the left, that is that wind and solar can save the day, which of course it can't. And it's a great film. It's compelling viewing. Sure, it's probably riddled with errors, as it's a Michael Moore film. There are errors, but its basic thesis holds, and that is that wind and solar and batteries are unreliable. It's been heavily critiqued by the renewable energy industry, which of course is propped up by taxpayer funds. They've got a lot to lose in this. My simple point would be, let's stop putting the $2 billion a year that we as Australians fund for the renewable energy target. Let's cut that money out the system, let wind and solar compete along with baseload power on its merits, and let's see how that goes. We're not holding our breath. Greg Hunt, our health minister, has been under a lot of pressure of late over the issue of how children who are suffering from gender dysphoria, that is, they think they have been born in the wrong body, and what a transition, what the appropriate medical treatment for them is, and the ethics surrounding that. Last year, 200 doctors petitioned Greg Hunt for an independent parliamentary inquiry into what's going on in these gender clinics around the country where kids are being prescribed puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and in some cases with the permission of authorities like the family court. Now it can be permission granted by doctors to have surgery, which is irreversible. Dr. Michelle Telfer at the Royal Children's Hospital Gender Clinic in Melbourne wants more taxpayer money so that she can begin performing double mastectomies on girls under the age of 18. Now, this is pretty extreme stuff here, and the 200 doctors who petitioned Hunt last year are right to call for an open parliamentary inquiry that's transparent. Well, this has been heavily resisted by the Rainbow political lobby, and they have now finally convinced Greg Hunt to walk away from this, and he's all but announced that this week, and that's a terrible shame. And it's incredibly ironic because the same week that Australia is standing up to communist China about having an independent and transparent investigation into how on earth this virus got out of Wuhan and infected the whole world, killed over 100,000 people and decimated our economies, Australia is standing firm, showing international leadership against great pressure from communist China to back down. We're saying no, there's got to be an investigation. And yet, when the Rainbow lobby here in Australia says we don't want an investigation into how we are treating children with controversial treatments that are irreversible and life-altering, we don't want that sort of light shone on our practices, the health minister backs down. I think that's outrageous. Well, I want to show you something now which I think is quite exciting just to finish up with. And many of you will know that I've been writing a book. It's in the process of being published by Connor Court. Publishing, and it's called I Kid You Not. The subtitle is Notes from 20 Years in the Trenches of the Culture Wars. And what I've tried to do is outline some of the stories that I've been, stories of political battles that I've been engaged in the last 20 odd years, going back to my time as a young elected councillor on the Toowoomba City Council, where I served for 6 years. We fought the Labor government under Peter Beattie, trying to legalise brothels and create a state-sanctioned trade in the bodies of young women. That's been a disaster 20 years on. I document that in the book, some of those other early battles. And then through to my time at Australian Christian Lobby, where we fought for the human rights of the unborn, and also obviously the big marriage debate of 2017. I was going to only write one chapter on that, it morphed into 3. I'm really excited about this project. Pre-sales are available from Connor Court, connorcourtpublishing.com.au. We've already pre-sold well over 100, which I have undertaken to personally sign at the initiative of the publisher. And if you want to order a copy between now and June the 1st, you'll also get a personally signed copy in the mail. So it's $29.95, connorcourtpublishing.com.au. I'm really hoping this book will inspire another generation of political activists to get into the culture wars. It's hard work, but it's rewarding to be telling the truth, and I think it's only a matter of time before the truth will win out, but we need more voices in the space, and that's one of the reasons why I've written this book. Well, look, thanks for being part of today's broadcast and watching, and until next time,